That was probably him just muting, but we'll figure that out.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, it's pretty buzzy.
Yeah. Let's see. And we
It's
can't
like,
hear you.
You're halfway plugged in or something.
Yeah, it does sound like. Let's see. Let's just make that go away for a second. You may at some point you may have to hop out and hop back. There we go.
There. Hey, let's play this clip real quick. I played the drug thing, and apparently they either pulled this out or this was right before that. I thought I had the whole fucking clip, but this was the funny part.
Well, I would just do cocaine. That was really.
Yeah.
So. And not just
It's all choppy, Chris.
That's down and dirty. Good anymore, and the stuff started to get a real rattle in it too. I don't know where it.
There we go.
How about now?
Heck yeah.
Never mind.
It was the mic not plugged in all the way.
That was the kind of buzz it was sounding like. Yeah. How's it going, my friend? Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, man. Thanks for having me back. How you guys doing?
Doing well. Max Egan sends his love. He had to jam about 15 minutes ago. But yeah, said he was stoked on the work you've been doing. I got to hang out with Jay from the Fluoride Action Network not too long ago. He
Jay's
hooked
a big supporter of yours.
Jay's awesome, man. He hooked my lady up with a fluoride filter.
Nice. Very cool, dude.
That I get to install when I get back there.
Sweet, man. Got to protect yourself.
Heck yeah. Dude, it's well, okay, so I actually, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about was your observations at the Bitcoin conference, because you went to that too. We had Tony Arterburn on a week or two ago. He was sharing some of his insights, and you actually got to talk to and interview a couple of people and at least maybe shout out a couple of others. And I was very curious as to how that went.
Yeah, so I did write a piece on this. It's over at thelastamericanvagabond.com. I think I called it, let's see, I got it right here. I called it The Co-opting of Bitcoin, Bitcoin Nashville, Peter Thiel, Donald Trump, and Rumble. And I went in person. I was with Ryan, actually, of T-Lab, and Hakeem of the Above Phone. And I was there, as I think I've told you before, Steve, like I've been involved with the Bitcoin space since 2012. Got my first transaction back then. Started going to Bitcoin conferences back in 2013, 2014 as a journalist, interviewing people, trying to understand the space. And it was always clear from the beginning that there were people in that space who thought regulation was the answer, government involvement, this will make Bitcoin mature and accepted in the mainstream world and things like that. And then, of course, there was also always the more kind of crypto anarchist, people who saw potential in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency more broadly as a way to get out of the central banking system, a way to avoid taxes where you can, things like that. And that's definitely where I've always stood in as far as the discussion goes. And so those kind of, I guess, differing viewpoints have always been there. But back in the day, it seemed like there was more of the people who understood the kind of anarchist vision. Now, of course, in the last decade, that has changed pretty rapidly, especially the last 5, 7, 8 years, as the Bitcoin community has, Bitcoin, of course, I'm going to focus on that because of the Bitcoin Nashville is focused all about Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin maxis, the people who are maximalists who think anything other than Bitcoin is, in their words, a shit coin. Even things like Monero that are privacy based, it's like, oh no, only thing that exists is Bitcoin. If you talk about anything other than Bitcoin, you're doing a disservice. Bitcoin, and it has become, in some ways, somewhat cult-like, I would say, even to the point of, besides just the super extreme favoritism towards Bitcoin or the maximalism, just other aspects become part of the Bitcoin culture, like the carnivore diet and just different things that have kind of, for one reason or another, coalesced into the Bitcoin community. And a lot of that community is absolutely blinded by the fact that, yes, Bitcoin is historically up in terms of the pricing in dollars. And this community largely, especially those who came in the last 5 years, they only understand number go up, which is, of course, just like, oh, well, as long as Bitcoin's price is going up, that's good, right? It doesn't matter if there's Bilderberg getting involved and there's all these other shady fuckers involved. Like, oh, well, the number's going up, right? And that's all that matters. And I think that is a huge disservice, not only to the original vision of Bitcoin, but just to the potential for cryptocurrency to be something that can be anti-state and can allow people to avoid taxation and avoid banks, which is the way that I've used it since the beginning. And so that vision, though, is very predominant, especially at these major Bitcoin conferences. I went to one a couple months ago in Austin called Consensus. Is another big one with like 5,000 people there. Bitcoin Nashville, I think they said there was 10,000 plus people there. And of course, you had Russell Brand, you had Chris Pavlovsky, the CEO of Rumble. They had a lot of politicians there, and it was very much focused on regulation. And of course, they had Trump there, they had RFK there. Regulation and how we're going to get Bitcoin to be accepted in the mainstream. And with some of the more mainstream moves like the ETFs, which BlackRock is involved via Tether and other weird, shady things like that, most of the Bitcoin community thinks like it's a great success. Like, we're winning, Bitcoin is being talked about by presidential candidates now. And that's a big change from where it was 10 years ago. Excuse me. And they are, for the most part, accurate about that. But of course, it's not like the mainstream is hearing about Bitcoin as this radical vision that is going to help you circumvent the Federal Reserve. No, as I said, most people understand it as just, it's an investment. Put money in Bitcoin and maybe you'll get rich and get a Lambo, or the number's going to go up and you're going to make money. Or a lot of the normie folks who, I would say some who were at Bitcoin Nashville, have more than likely never actually transacted their own cryptocurrency on their own. What they've probably done is they bought it through an ETF and they've got some financial advisor that handles all the stuff for them. They've never probably opened up a wallet on their own. They've probably never done a peer-to-peer transactions. And they probably have no idea of the original vision of Bitcoin as this radical thing. And so to me, that alone is problematic. But for the other side, they say, like, as I said, they see it as it's growing. So no matter what, even if there are bad people involved, it doesn't matter as long as Bitcoin keeps growing. Even if it's being promoted as digital gold and not as an actual currency to use, which is by and large what most of these people believe. So they don't care if there's KYC, know your customers, at every entry point, because, well, it's not a currency. Why would I care if I can go out and spend it at the restaurant? Because it's just digital gold. It's just another investment that I'm supposed to hold on to, and maybe it'll make me rich one day, which is extremely antithetical to the original vision, which was digital cash, private, anonymous, etc. And there are other better tools like Monero I mentioned and others that are already doing this, so maybe it doesn't really matter. But of course, Bitcoin is the big one. Bitcoin is the one that all the regular people have at least heard of in some degree. And this Bitcoin Nashville conference is being attended by so many famous and politically connected people. So obviously that space, it does have influence and it does have importance. And what my article is basically looking at is drawing the connections between some of the people who are present at Bitcoin Nashville, some of the people who are involved in Bitcoin Magazine, and then some of the connections between those folks and the Trump campaign, particularly through Peter Thiel, JD Vance, and then connections to that and people associated with Rumble. And it's just a whole mess of swamp creatures, I'll say, and I'm happy to get further into it. But that was actually, I guess, part one of a kind of a series I'm working on. I put out another article last week that was more focused on Eric Schmidt and Google, not directly tied to Bitcoin, but it's kind of showing the other side of the swamp, that you've got the Peter Thiel's steering committee member of the Bilderberg Group, who claims to be libertarian in some capacity or another, funding not only JD Vance, but of course supporting Trump since 2016. And on the other side, you've got Eric Schmidt, formerly of Google, and his kind of left-leaning big tech bros, funding and supporting Harris. And of course, Eric Schmidt is also a steering committee member of the Bilderberg Group. So on both sides, you've got steering committee member of the Bilderberg Groups funding each presidential campaign. And the Thiel side, the PayPal mafia, the David Sachs, Howard Lutnick of Cantor Fitzgerald, all these people are going all in on crypto and Bitcoin and saying, Trump's going to be the crypto president. And I think this is largely a co-opting of the space. And of course, Whitney and Mark Godwin have recently done some great work on that as well. But that's what I'm really pointing out with this article, is that the Bitcoin community is being completely blinded because all they're seeing is like, oh my God, we're having huge conferences and getting celebrities and politicians to pay attention to us finally. This is our big moment, and Trump's going to be the Bitcoin president. But in fact, what we're witnessing is a complete co-opting of, if not the infrastructure, which there is some elements of that through the company Blockstream, which also goes back to the Bilderberg Group, absolutely a co-opting of the vision of what Bitcoin is and was supposed to be.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And we've had some conversations about cryptocurrency going back several years now. And I think you and I have always been kind of more or less on par with how, we see these larger tokens and things like that, and what blockchain is in general. And so to see it go from something that was really on the periphery, even in the first year of COVID lockdown, to Russell Brand and Don Jr. hanging out at a table with Tucker Carlson and Chris Pavlovsky, being like, don't you wish you were in this club kind of thing. It's wild, I guess, to witness and see such heavily connected elements take up root in the space. Not to mention the crazy shit RFK Jr. was saying about like, oh, we'll make it the reserve currency because we already have so much of it. Yeah, from fucking civil asset forfeiture, you goddamn pirates.
Yeah, from stealing it from people like the Silk Road and others. That to me is another kind of big part of this. And I did mention that in my article, that the only reserves that the government has is through the theft and of what you mentioned, of taking it from people that are allegedly doing illegal things, which is basically just trying to provide privacy for people. And, I will say that I was glad to see at Bitcoin Nashville, there was at least 2, 3, maybe 4 panels that were focused on the privacy aspect, but it was still very disconnected from like the Bitcoin, the majority view of the Bitcoiners. Like you had this giant, massive main stage where Russell Brand and RFK and Trump and all them were speaking. And then you had other side stages, and the privacy discussions were sort of relegated to those side stages, which in my mind is a huge blind spot because, okay, maybe the Samurai Wallet founders being arrested because of claims that, they're allowing North Korean hackers to launder money through this private wallet and swaps. Maybe that doesn't directly impact Bitcoin, but it absolutely will in the bigger picture. And I think that this is another area where so many people, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but just normie, regular people who are coming into the space because they heard about it from some influencer on YouTube telling them that Bitcoin is the great thing to do. Those people, again, they don't understand the original vision of it. But not only that, they're probably, if they're even touching the coins themselves with wallets and transactions, which I doubt most of them are. Again, most people probably have financial advisors. If they're even doing that, they are more than likely not using anything to protect their privacy because they might have, like many people did for the first few years, falsely believe that Bitcoin is anonymous when it's not anonymous in any way. It's one of the most easily tracked blockchains out there, especially with chain analysis companies now. So what happens in the other spaces, like, I don't know if we touched on this last time I was on here, but like we've seen the arrest of the Samurai Wallet guys. Last year it was the Tornado Cash. Local Monero shut down. And here in Mexico, I was able to use Local Monero to, if I needed to get pesos, get some cash, I could sell my Monero to somebody anonymously through using Local Monero, and they would put it in escrow for a moment. The person would send me a code, a 12-digit code that I could then go to an ATM, not to a bank, like no ID, no nothing. I don't have to talk to a human. You just go to the ATM, you put in these 12-digit number, this code there, and then it gives you your cash. And then I go back to the app and I send him the Monero, and then boom, total anonymous, no government, no bank, and I can get cash immediately. Well, Local Monero chose to shut down voluntarily a couple months ago worldwide because of fear of what the U.S. government is starting to do, coming after different people who are actually trying to allow for there to be private crypto transactions. So what I believe we're witnessing is the U.S. government, as well as other governments, are going after the privacy tools like Monero, like some of the various wallets and exchanges and swaps that allow you to, in their mind, it's all money laundering. But what it really is like, say I have Monero and I want to trade to this one. These exchanges or these swaps let you do that instantly. Boom, one currency to the other. And the government hates that because you can also use what are known as tumblers and mixers to further hide and mix your money. And they don't want that to happen. So they're going after all the various private ways to access using crypto. And then instead, we're getting this big push towards Bitcoin. It's like, okay, Bitcoin is now finally being accepted. Politicians are involved, celebrities involved. But of course, it's going to be all KYC. It's going to be all tracked and traced. And as Whitney and Mark have been pointing out, they also believe that the stable coins, like for example, Trump's promising he's not going to do a CBDC. He's like, there's not going to be a CBDC under my administration. We'll see, right? But even if he does keep that promise, it doesn't mean there won't be some other version. And what Whitney and Mark are pointing to is that more than likely it's going to come through stable coins. Mark wrote the book called Bitcoin Dollar. And so what he believes is happening, and I think it's becoming fairly clear, it's accurate, is that sure, Bitcoin will be allowed to flourish, but not in this sense of a private currency that, routes around the central banks and taxation, et cetera. It's just going to be allowed to flourish alongside the dollar. And Mark calls it the Bitcoin dollar because similar to the petrodollar, where oil is pegged to dollar amounts, we might continue to just see that with Bitcoin because people don't think of Bitcoin as, okay, how much is, they always say, how much is Bitcoin worth in US dollars? So we're still going back to the fiat system. And I think that's part of kind of the trap here is, okay, you can have your Bitcoins, but ultimately it's going to still be pegged to the dollar and it's only digital gold. So you don't actually spend it anywhere, like an alternative currency that could actually get away from the fiat system, the central bank fiat system. Instead, it's just another asset to hold alongside there. Meanwhile, while BlackRock and other big companies like that are getting into Tether, which is another token that's tied to the US dollar, USDC, USDT, these other ones like that. And so essentially you end up with the same situation where this potentially revolutionary technology doesn't really end up creating any kind of revolution and instead just keeps people further trapped into the dollar system and maintains dollar dominance. And at the same time allows BlackRock and these other companies who are buying up US Treasury debt via Tether to maintain even more control over the US economy. So it's this big switcheroo, but all the Bitcoiners are going to be like, yeah, well, famous people are promoting it and talking about it and the price is going up, right? And so that's all good. And I've talked to these people, especially the maxis, they've got the blindfolds on. They don't want to hear anything. They'll just say, oh, well, Bitcoin doesn't care if Bilderbergers get involved, or it's good if Jamie Dimon and these people want to get involved because that means it's going to grow, not fundamentally understanding that even though it's meant to be a distributed, decentralized technology, there are still ways to effectively control the on-ramps and the off-ramps, like I mentioned with KYC, with also scaring away and shutting down more private tokens like Monero and swaps and exchanges like that. So you end up where all that's left is this very controlled, co-opted, hijacked Bitcoin space that sure, people are allowed to trade and buy and have ETFs, but it's not going to be anything revolutionary. And I'm pretty sure we're already at that point. And in a moment, I'd like to share about some of the connections between all this and Rumble, because this is actually, I did have a moment. I talked to Russell Brand there. We didn't do an interview, but we are in communication. So hopefully there'll be some interviews coming up. And I did for a moment speak to Chris Pavlovsky, the CEO of Rumble. And I'll just be real. I mean, he definitely brushed me off like I was nobody important. He was just like, who are you? Okay, maybe I have time for an interview later. And then, it didn't end up happening. But I still would like to ask him some questions. And those questions are related to the various people on the Rumble board, funding Rumble, et cetera, who are also some of these same shady players that are getting into the Bitcoin space. There's definitely an overlap between the right-leaning tech bros who are supporting Trump, who are going all in on Bitcoin, and who are also connected to Rumble.
Yeah, no. And I mean, we've been talking now for a year and a half or more with Ian Davis and Mark and Whitney, and you got a handful of other people about the bait and switch with it. Swift, the international payment processing system, said, yeah, we're going to have the infrastructure to handle individual nation states CBDCs by 2025 at the latest. They said this in, I think, November of last year, maybe October, but we're on track to have it done by 2024. So the stable coins and bank issued or corporate issued tokens that people get on the front end are going to be what's used as currency, and it's all going to get processed as a CBDC on the back end. And
it'll ultimately be the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's my whole point, because you're going to have meet the exact same protocols for a transaction that you would for a CBDC on whatever your front end issued token is. And if your social credit score ain't up to par, buddy, you're screwed.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. Cash App, right? Cash App is all based off of Bitcoin and blockchain. That's why we can send that stuff back and forth directly to the bank immediately. And you can buy and sell Bitcoin. Now you can send and receive Bitcoin. You can buy and sell stocks. They have all your IRS information, track every purchase and every movement made with Cash App's very popular.
Oh yeah,
like
that's
Steve
definitely
today with the business thing that he's got so long to.
Yeah, Cash App just told me. Yeah, Cash App.
I heard that earlier.
I had till the 17th of September. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely been one of the problems, I think, with and again, like if you had a project and you really believe in Bitcoin and you're like, how do we get it to go mainstream? Okay, well, let's work with these big companies that people are already using. Because think about this. I mean, even without a CBDC, most of the transactions we're doing are all digital. I mean, in the last 10 years, PayPal, Cash App, Google Pay, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, right? I mean, they've got so many people already used to doing things digitally. And crypto is similar in that sense, but of course, it involves a lot more personal responsibility. For example, if you're buying your Bitcoin through PayPal, I don't know where it is anymore, but I know at the beginning with PayPal, you couldn't actually withdraw that Bitcoin from there. It was just sitting on some PayPal wallet app there, and that's not Bitcoin, because so many people have lost their money, lost their crypto savings, because they keep them on an exchange, and then that exchange gets hacked, or they don't actually have a self-custody, self-hosted wallet where they actually have the private keys. They don't understand how that works because they're used to either a bank or a government or a company like PayPal handling their money, and they're used to that system where, oops, I have a problem. Let me call up the corporation and say, hey, or call up the bank and say, hey, I'm having some issues. Can you fix this? That doesn't exist in the crypto space. You have to actually have that responsibility. But so in some ways, if you were trying to get more mass adoption, maybe you would want to work with companies like that, which would bring in the normies so that they don't have to learn all the difficult things. But in the same token, it's also giving them sort of a Bitcoin crypto light version of what it's really like. And instead, it's just getting them used to like, oh yeah, I bought some Bitcoin. I bought it through Cash App, or I bought it through PayPal, etc. And they still don't understand, like, the whole point was to get away from those legacy systems.
They also on Cash App allow you to earn Bitcoin with every purchase and set up a savings thing, so it automatically goes into Bitcoin, which is interesting because when the IRS attempts to tax, right, they tax per transaction when it comes to crypto. So if you have your thing set to buy Bitcoin with every purchase, each time it does that, that's a transaction on the IRS, right? That it's been transacted. And then if you collect, you've saved some money for a week or so, and then Bitcoin booms, right? And you're like, wow, it's $15 now, and you take that out. Well, now the capital gains on that because you've took that out within how many days, and it's a little thing, but then you keep doing it over and over and over and over and over and over every time you purchase something.
Well, not only that,
there's these little traps that are set.
There's going to be a record of it through those apps, right? Again, if you're doing it in a private way, then because I don't know any serious crypto person who pays taxes on their Bitcoin or their crypto, but yeah, sure, they got a lot of normies paying that because of IRS rules. And this was another issue, like at the Bitcoin Nashville thing. I found this to be super ironic, and again, another disappointment. there's a room full of vendors, the exhibition hall, and they've got miners, they've got all kinds of different projects, and some of them like are trying to use crypto and blockchain in some really revolutionary ways. But then you've got stuff like this. There was a couple of companies promoting, like, learn how to avoid paying taxes on your Bitcoin, pay us for this service. And one of them was being promoted by Russell Brand. And I just thought that's funny because like the original vision, again, is digital cash. It's out of the government's hands. It's this very cyberpunk crypto anarchist vision of, of ending central banking by using alternative currencies that government can't track and we can take everywhere, et cetera. So there was nothing in the original vision about paying taxes on this stuff. But now they've got people who are like coming into the space, and because of the IRS rules, that new rules in the last few years, maybe paying taxes on their Bitcoin that they were never intended to pay taxes on in the first place. And then you've got companies selling them services to teach them how not to pay taxes on the Bitcoin. So it's just this whole industry created around like, here, pay us some more money so we can teach you how not to pay taxes on something you should have never been paying taxes on in the first place.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, it's just a corruption of the space in general.
Yeah. Who do you think was involved with our Satoshi, like creating Bitcoin? Me personally, I think Elon and Peter Thiel were in the room.
I definitely think there's a lot of interesting theories. I don't have any of my own particular, but I did see this report actually the other day. I think it was from Coinbase or one of the CoinDesk that was showing there's a journalist. I can't remember his name. He's not like a Bitcoiner. He's not a conspiracy theorist. He's just a mainstream journalist who files a lot of FOIA requests. And he actually just put one into the FBI for any records related to Satoshi Nakamoto. And he didn't get anything back, of course, saying here's the identity. But he was posting the other day on Twitter saying the response that they gave said something to the effect of an individual or multiple individuals. And based on his interpretation, his experience with FOIA requests, he was saying that the language that they used is usually used when they're referring to non-U.S. persons. So I don't know if that gives us any clues or tips on who it was or how many people were involved.
Would it depend on, when you say a non-U.S. person, would it depend on which passport they're using, which citizenship they're...
Could be that.
A lot of them are dual citizens and shit.
Could be a dual citizen. Yeah,
well, I'm not a U.S. citizen at this time.
I don't put it out of. I know there's a lot of people, especially like this is one thing. Like I'm a very critical of Bitcoin and the space and crypto for I think what are legitimate reasons. But again, also I'm a person who can say, look, I haven't used a bank account since 2008. I've been using crypto since 2012. I wish I saved a lot of my Bitcoin from back then. But I'm one of the crazy people who actually do use it as a currency. I buy my plane flights with Bitcoin or with other cryptos. I rent hotels and things like that using some of these sites. I've tried to use a lot of the actual tools that let you either buy gift cards or things with Bitcoin and then pay for things with that. So I am somebody who has tried to exist in the space and really use it as a currency. And my criticisms are about those who have co-opted it and kind of taken it away from that vision. And then you have other people who criticize Bitcoin and crypto and blockchain who have never touched a wallet, who have no experience at all. Their viewpoint is just technology is bad, blockchain bad, crypto, Bitcoin bad. And I think they have a very unnuanced view of things because there are obviously concerns. And I've written about this and reported on the concerns of blockchain and digital IDs, et cetera, et cetera. But I think there is a difference between that because there will be people who hear this conversation and they'll just say, yeah, it was all co-opted from the beginning. You idiots, I can't believe you bought this. This is an NSA plot to trick you, et cetera. And they'll point to things like SHA-256 and say there's some loose connection to the NSA with that algorithm. And these are all valid conversations to have. But I just want to make it clear that I think those are two distinct criticisms. People who think it has been co-opted from the beginning, blockchain's all bad, all crypto's bad, et cetera. This is paving the way to the New World Order currency. I don't necessarily think that view is true. And yet there are absolutely those same swamp creatures getting involved in the space. Now, sure, it could have been that was their plan. Like, hey, let's create this anonymously, create this mythos around it, unleash it into the world, and we'll let it sort of slowly gain traction. And then once it starts to grow, we will manage it and steer it. Sure, that could be true. But at the same time, it could be that it just grew and they realized like we need to take this in the direction we want it. I don't claim to know one way or the other, but just like with other tools like cell phones, GPS, the internet itself, social media, we know all these tools go back to U.S. military intelligence, NQTEL funding from the CIA, etc. So it wouldn't be that surprising to see or to know or to find out that crypto and Bitcoin was one of those projects that comes from military intelligence in one way or the other. But as I've always argued with those other tools, like the internet itself, sure, the internet started from the military's ARPANET, but obviously they can't control every aspect of the internet. So even if they intended or were the very beginning of it and like, okay, we're going to create this and unleash this to co-opt it and control it, clearly they can't control every viewpoint. They can't control every access point. We're sitting here talking freely on the internet that has its origins going back to US military. So those discussions I think are worthwhile, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing valid to gain from it, because while all these critics and people who've been sitting on the sidelines are complaining, I can't believe you're using Bitcoin or crypto, you're falling for this trap. I've been using it to not talk to the IRS. I've been using it to avoid banks. And what are they doing? They're probably playing with fiat dollars and paying taxes and using banks.
So can I just paint a picture in the perspective of the esoteric? Because Derrick, you're familiar with Passio's work and you've also read Steiner's Anthroposophy, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so a hypercube and blockchain are the same thing. A hypercube is a dark Luciferian prison notion of keeping us in a perpetual sequence of the same thing over and over again in order to inhibit the development of consciousness of the species and viscerally entwine it with the technocratic control grid, which is in essence an electrical alchemical summoning ritual. So is much like you were talking about, this something that can ultimately be utilized in a beneficial capacity, but nevertheless falls under the purview of regulators and power grids that can put it to zero at any given time. And that would then basically make it sequestered from something that would be as beneficial as breaking apart the blockchain and not having it currency based, but more have it or trust, rather than the idea of currency, which seems to be something that itself distracts and maligns us. A ledger of trust is actually just a reference for what exists, and that's important. So that's something to keep, but at the same time, it can be a trap, you know?
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, and this is to me why people who ignore the potential for blockchain miss that point, because the currency is just one application that could be built on there. Like you said, you could use the ledger for trust verification. I've made the argument over the years, as somebody who doesn't have a tax history and doesn't have a bank history, just as one example, it's very hard to go out and get an apartment. If I go back to the US and try to get rented, people look at me like I don't exist, right? But I've tried to do things like, for example, I could use one of the blockchains that exist out there, any number of them. And if I was getting, say, for example, when I get paid for my monthly writing for TLab, I could take a screenshot of that payment. I could put it on some account on a blockchain ledger, and I could keep a record of my payments or my identity or in some capacity like that. And that could be used to create trust between individuals, to verify, hey, I am a human being, I have money, I'm getting paid, etc. There's so many other ways that this technology could be used, but I also agree with what you're saying there at the beginning as far as like the potential for it to be a trap. I mean, I think that it's just a tool, right? And I think in the beginning, I was definitely more wide-eyed in terms of believing that, hey, maybe this really could be something that is going to be revolutionary and might upset truly be disruptive to the economic systems. I'm definitely less optimistic about that these days. I think I see it more in a utilitarian sense right now. Like, yeah, if I can use Monero, for example, we bought land out here in Mexico, and a big chunk of that money was transferred, from the US over here using crypto. And if I try to do that with a bank, it's going to set off all kinds of alarms. I'm going to have questions. My account might get frozen. So I try to use it, I guess, in a utilitarian way now, like where I can, I'll use it when I can, but I definitely have less faith and hope that it's going to be this super disruptive thing that's going to liberate humanity, especially when, like I've been talking about, the Bitcoin space has been so misdirected and these different ways. And on the spiritual front, yeah, I mean, I think that if I like the idea that it was a potential to disrupt that system and create something new that physically, materially, as well as spiritually could take us away from the evil, corrupted systems that we've all been, just basically born into. but I don't think it's really going in that direction, you know. And in terms of the power that you mentioned, like with if they wanted to, people will often say, well, what happens if they turn off the power, they turn off the internet? Because an internet kill switch does exist. The U.S. government does have one, as do other governments. Ultimately, I mean, that's a concern, I think, with crypto or anything. But I also think it's important for people to remember all banking systems are based on electricity and the internet now. So if the power went out or the internet goes down, you're not going to be able to access your money in the bank either, let alone me being able to get access to my my Bitcoin or my crypto. But the difference is I could have $10,000 worth of Monero on this USB stick, and I could have it here, ensure the internet goes down, the power goes down. But when and if it did come back on, the banks are going to tell you all your money's gone, and we have to restart you now, and you have a digital dollar now. But my Monero would still be here, and as long as I could plug it in and connect it
even
somewhere,
without
then
the
I could
internet,
still access it.
Even without the internet, with the stick and a cold wallet, you'd be able to transfer it still between computers in person, at least.
Exactly. You could still do peer-to-peer transactions. Yeah, exactly. And that's my point. Is so people who are worried about that, like, that's not just a problem of crypto. In fact, I think it's more a problem of the banks, because if the power goes down and the internet goes down, you're not gonna be able to get your bank money. And they'll tell you it's FDIC insured or whatever, but if they turn it back on and say, okay, to prevent that, all your money's now going to go to digital dollars, CBDCs, stable coins, whatever. But as you guys just said, we could still meet in person and transact crypto or Monero. And as long as we agree, hey, I still believe this has value, because of course it's all subjective, right? I mean, it's just us freaking playing with papers or digital money and saying, hey, I think this is worth this much. We could still transact that value. It doesn't mean it would be a perfect situation, but I don't think that's as much as a kind of a gotcha that people think when they bring that up with crypto.
I think it's more to do with just reinvesting people in the premise of currency is legitimate and having some sort of authority of our spiritual investment, and in so doing, more or less just continuing the fiat environment in an electrical medium. It gives us those literal bursts of temporary liberation and freedom, but that's just prior to the point of the train being reoriented back into a tunnel of darkness. And so much like you alluded to previously, being more wide-eyed about its potentials, that's prior to the point of it being funneled back into, the state's butthole, which is arguably where they've situated the whole thing.
You mentioned the FDIC, and I don't know if people remember this back in, I think this was 2020. Well, I might have the date.
We're living in unprecedented time. At a time of a pandemic like this, it is way too easy to get confused and to have fear about what you should be doing with your money in your accounts, especially as you're looking at the volatility in the stock market and the financial sector. This is what I would like you to take away from this. Your money is safe at the banks. The last thing you should be doing is pulling your money out of the banks now, thinking that it's going to be safer someplace else. You don't want to be walking around with large wads of cash, and you certainly don't want to be hoarding cash in your mattress. It didn't pan out well for so many people. And I will tell you this, no depositor has lost a penny of their insured deposits since 1933, when the FDIC was created. So if you're talking about having your money in a safe place, please keep it in an FDIC insured bank.
Says the Ukrainian lady. That was in 2020, man.
Exact opposite advice I give people. I'm literally like, hey, look, trust me, it'd be better stuffed under your mattress or in the safe at home than being in the bank. And I hadn't seen
that. Was right before. Was it before the last Bitcoin boom? Or was that in 2021 of April 2021 when Doge and everything really blew up?
Yeah, 2021 is around that time.
Yeah. So that was March of 2020. That Ukrainian lady was telling us to don't take your money out of the banks. Keep it there. It's very safe.
Yeah, I kind of miss those days. I think maybe around Occupy movement a decade plus ago was probably the last time I saw big energy around divesting from the banks, because personally, I feel like that's something left, right, center, whatever, people should support the idea of, like, hey, I still don't really get it personally. Like, and this is not an attack on anybody. It's just like something I struggle with. That, like, okay, we know that JP Morgan Chase helped Epstein funnel money to make payments for whatever he was up to. But how many freedom fighters and freedom lovers got their money in that bank? And to me, that does matter. It's like, okay, well, I'm morally and financially supporting this same industry and these people by keeping my money in those institutions, not to mention the robbing of the people after 2008. I really do miss the days when there was more energy around like bank divestment and let's take our money from them. Let's, even if it's just like put in a small credit union, not to say that those are all perfect either, because I've definitely been shown examples of credit unions that were doing some COVID funny business during those years. And even some of the, like, for example, one of the, I don't know if it's called the National Credit Union or something to that effect. The head of that organization was speaking at Bitcoin Nashville as well and at Consensus. And he was talking about stable coins and things of that sort. So it's not like a credit union, even though I kind of consider these to be half measures, like in terms of opting out. Like you're in a big bank, okay, maybe you realize you don't want that. So you go to a small local bank or credit union. But even then, those institutions are still under the same FDIC, same major institutions. If they go CBDCs, they're going to go along with it too. But it's a step at least away from the Bank of America's, the Chase, et cetera. If you want, Steve, I can. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was
just going to get into Rumble, but you go ahead.
Yeah, it's basically just touching on the concept of ultimately the greatest currency, if we're looking at it as a legitimate form of investing the depths of our being, is what we value and what we place value in. That's the entire basis of the value for value system. The idea that you are getting something and that you would voluntarily give something in return. So that energetic kind of momentum, you're right, very much was something that was in the Occupy spirit of things. And they clamped down on that motherfucker hard so that they'd make an example of it. And it's not allowed to come back up in any legitimate capacity. And I haven't really observed it in the freedom community because it seems so deeply frayed and turned against itself. And it's almost like inhabited by so many. I love Steve's term for it, and I think it's just perfect, which is controlled opportunists, such that created the terrarium environment that feeds them, and they never need to understand that they're controlled opposition. They just do it of their own free will. And so I see this whole thing as just like anything to keep us in front of a screen. That's really what this all is on its greatest point of reference, because that's the black mirror that we stare in to tell us who we are, and then that's the determinant of what we go and put out there.
I think that's a great point. I mean, I like I said, I support Monero. I support those who are trying to use cryptos still as a way to be something revolutionary, but I don't think that should be the final stop. I've also got gold backs here, and I've got silver, and I've got a little bit of gold, and I stock seeds as well. I believe seeds is probably the most valuable currency we can have. And then of course you got, community currency, like other human beings that you can collaborate, that you can work, like you said, face to face, not just behind the screen. Those are all very important forms of currency. And even especially when people think about these things in terms of investment, I also try to remind people, like, look, invest in yourself. If you've got some extra money, don't just give it to the freaking bank and sit it there. Like, take a permaculture course and learn some skills. Take a beekeeping course. Do something to give yourself some more practical skills and knowledge. Work with other people. Those are all valuable forms of currency and investments as well.
Shit. Sorry, I thought I was muting me.
No, we love hearing you
coughing in my ear, bro. Steve, I'm gonna hit this Rumble real quick thing if we can. See if we can get us kicked off Rumble.
Yeah.
So the Rumble thing is weird to me, man, because this is why I you know me, I don't like to just speculate and assume I know other people's intentions and motivations, because I don't. Which is why I wanted to interview Chris Pavlovsky, and I hope to at a future point. So if by some chance he hears this report or sees this article, let's talk about it. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. But for those who don't know, Rumble was actually founded in 2013, but it wasn't popular till 2020 when it took on its current kind of current phase. And that was, of course, because COVID and YouTube censoring, everybody starts looking for an alternative. And Rumble was one of those alternatives. But it really was in 2021 when they got this major influx of cash from Peter Thiel and from JD Vance via Narya Capital. And I'm actually working on a mind map to kind of map out these various connections, because they all just connect and reconnect to each other. Peter Thiel gave in his own money to Rumble, but then Peter Thiel also was invested in JD Vance's Narya Capital, and Narya Capital gave to Rumble. So you've got like kind of double Thiel money going on in there. And then as part of that deal, one of the gentlemen, his name's Ethan Falang from Narya, which is, again, JD Vance's thing, joined Rumble's board. And so that was already right away some connections from Peter Thiel. Does that mean Peter Thiel controls it? Not necessarily. Does that mean that all of Rumble's user data is being fed into Palantir? We don't know. And these are the kind of questions I would like to ask. Like, is there any connection beyond just receiving money from Peter Thiel? Do they have any say over the editorial policies? Do they have any say over the type of video content? So far, it doesn't seem so. Rumble does seem to, despite being mostly right-leaning, they do seem to welcome all opinions at the moment. It could be sort of a honeypot to be, controlled later. We'll see. But then in 2021, you had Glenn Greenwald and then Russell Brand announcing that they were going to do their shows exclusively on Rumble, and that was another big push for them. And then you had, what's that guy, Dan, whatever, Bongino or something like that. Yeah. So some of those right-wing folks kind of jumping on board, and this is where you really start to see the growth of Rumble. Then in late 2021, Cantor Fitzgerald, which is this big investment firm, CF Acquisition Corp is their specific name. They're a division of Cantor Fitzgerald. They announced that they were going to help Rumble go public in the form of $400 million. This deal was completed by September 2022. And from what I've been able to gather and what Rumble said is that $400 million was helping Rumble build out their cloud, basically their cloud computing technology so that they can host all the videos and developing their own ad platform and things like that. Now, the reason that's interesting is earlier in this article, I talk about how the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, his name's Howard Lutnick, was speaking at the Bitcoin Nashville. And he was, they're pledging billions of dollars. They're going to put billions of dollars from Cantor Fitzgerald into Bitcoin. And again, the Bitcoin crowd celebrates. Howard Lutnick's got some interesting connections all on his own. He, again, is the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. In 2016, he was Jeffrey Epstein's next door neighbor in New York City, not like in the same neighborhood. I mean, literally next door to Jeffrey Epstein's apartment. And he was raising money for the Clintons. So that doesn't mean he knew Epstein, doesn't mean he was involved in any of Epstein's stuff, but it sure is weird. It's just one of those weird connections. He lives next door to Epstein. He's raising a lot of money for the Clintons in 2016, but then a couple of years later, he's going all in on Rumble and this free speech neutral platform. Another interesting tidbit about Howard Lutnick, Cantor Fitzgerald's, their offices were in World Trade Center 1 on 9/11, and nearly all of their employees died in the terror attacks, except for Howard Lutnick, who was actually, that day, he decided to not go into the office because he wanted to go with his wife to take his child to kindergarten. And so he survived the attacks of 9/11. I think that's an interesting point. It doesn't, again, I'm not claiming anything about it, but all these little interesting points start to add up. Neighbor of Epstein, raising money for the Clintons, survives 9/11. Nevertheless, he's there. He's the head of Cantor Fitzgerald. They're going all in on Bitcoin, and now they're going all in on Rumble. And then since Rumble has become a public traded company, you can go look up who the top shareholders are, and it includes Cantor Fitzgerald, Vanguard Group, BlackRock, State Street, Rockefeller, Capital Management. Now, of course, anybody can buy stocks in a publicly traded company. Doesn't mean that they control it. Chris Pavlovski has claimed that he's still like the number one, he's making the decisions, etc. But those are things that I think would be worth asking, because Cantor Fitzgerald is involved in Bitcoin. Howard Lutnick, their CEO, is speaking at Bitcoin Nashville. He's also giving millions of dollars to Rumble. Russell Brand's involved in Rumble. He's also speaking at the Bitcoin Nashville conference. And then at the same time, later on, David Sachs, who's part of that PayPal mafia along with Peter Thiel, he joined the board of Rumble in just last summer, June 2023. So, and he also, of course, has hosted he may have raised about $12 million for Donald Trump just a couple months ago in June. So you really see this overlap between what appears to be more right-leaning big tech bros going in on Trump, going in on crypto, and then the overlap with Rumble. And I definitely think that that's something worth asking, because you got Peter Thiel's fingerprints, you got JD Vance, you got David Sachs, and Howard Lutnick. Howard Lutnick has also spoke at the World Economic Forum. Peter Thiel's connected to the Bilderberg Group. David Sachs, PayPal, Peter Thiel, Palantir. There's just a lot of weird overlap here. And in the most, I guess, charitable perspective, you could just say this is just rich people investing in companies that they think might be successful, right? I mean, they see Rumble's growing, so they want to put their money in there. And to some degree, I think some rich folks are sort of agnostic about where the money goes, as long as it brings them returns. Like they'll fund left, they'll find right, they don't really care. But I do think these are things that we should be asking, and that people who use Rumble, and especially those who are putting their, I guess, their financial, like earning all their finances from Rumble, should consider, because I don't think it would be surprising if later Rumble's policies changed from being so neutral to starting to censor certain ideas and criticisms that might not fit in with the narrative of the funders of Rumble. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just Chris Pavlovsky being a smart businessman and taking money from rich other people who claim to have a shared vision of a neutral platform. And again, maybe the investors don't care whether it's right or left. They just want something that's going to bring them returns. I don't know at the moment, but that was my reason for, one of my main reasons for going to Bitcoin Nashville, to try to talk to Chris Pavlovsky, to ask him these questions directly. Unfortunately, I didn't get that chance.
That's all really interesting. I'm curious, from your perspective, do you feel as if, like, at a certain point, the people who have that much money are not making their decisions, and the money is owning and making decisions for them because it's an objective force in nature, and they're certainly at a certain point just guppies, unknowingly, not consciously grafting themselves to an entity that basically just uses us at its discretion? Because that's more how I've started to see these things. It's less of a materialist connecting of things and more of an understanding of the sea we're swimming through and what current we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, to your first part of the question, I definitely think that there's the big chance that these individuals I just named are not necessarily in control of their own funds or their money, whether it's more in the esoteric sense that you're mentioning, or literally just somebody else behind them making decisions for them. I definitely think that's a likelihood.
Yeah,
I definitely believe. I definitely believe people like Vivek Ramaswamy, who has a bunch of money in Rumble now, and even Don Jr., who has a bunch of money in Rumble and has a heavily promoted show on Rumble. I definitely don't think they're making their own financial decisions. I certainly believe they're being steered. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of these folks as well, like, have the Trump Jr. you mentioned, as well as some of the others who are on Rumble, and I think even the people I mentioned previously, they are part of the whole Israeli cabal and Israeli lobby as well. So I definitely think there's that influence going on in the background as well. And not that anybody needs to, like, if you're going to use Rumble and you're going to use it to talk shit about Trump all day, and they're going to let you, great, despite all the connections that they have that are pro-Trump and pro his campaign, then cool. Like, because obviously the CEOs of YouTube have their own opinions and their own thoughts. And originally we thought, okay, but those are irrelevant because this is a neutral platform and I can put whatever I want. But then with time we found out, nope, their influences and their beliefs are going to shape what opinions and ideas they allow on their platform. Rumble claims to be neutral and that they're not going to take that stance. And I hope that does stand. I mean, I'm not here to just shit on them for no reason, but I do think that we should, at least pay attention to some of these things and not because, I mean, Steve, and I'm sure you guys see the same thing. Like, it's similar to me. It's like the same thing of X and Musk are now the saviors of free speech, that, like, there's nothing we can do but praise them and no questions should be allowed, et cetera. I see a similar mindset with some people with Rumble where, whenever, for example, if I share something about my old YouTube channel, randomly deleting a video from 5 years ago, somebody will pop up and say, oh yeah, aren't you great? You have X. Aren't you great? You have Rumble. And, I don't use Rumble. I'm not on Rumble personally, but I am on Twitter. And sure, I'm great that some of my content survives on those platforms while it gets taken down on others. But that doesn't mean that I necessarily believe that the people running those platforms have the same values and interests that I do.
Right. No. And I mean, look, my philosophy was all of this is I've been kicked out of better bars by bigger bouncers. So I'm not, I'm staying until I absolutely have to leave, and that's not going to be my choice.
They're going to have to drag you out kicking and screaming.
Yeah, and they have a few places, the freaking iTunes and Google Play podcast, stuff like that, and YouTube certainly. We are highly reach limited on Rumble. It's kind of wild. Why we get people all the time that tell us they have to, like, physically type in, the name of the show, the day, like, spell it just spaced out so we don't show up as live on the first several pages. It's an actual mission to find the show on Rumble. And I mean, it took 3 years of having content up here before I got a single solitary payout from them. And that was because of tips. It wasn't because of ad revenue.
Yeah. I don't know if you can depend on them. And for people who are making their money on there, great. I mean, do what you can, get what you can from them. If you feel that's, serving you, back to the point earlier about like the spiritual side of things. Personally, I never took any money from Google, from YouTube. Even they randomly gave me my channel that they deleted in 2020 back about a month ago. Just all of a sudden it popped back on. And I've never chosen to monetize that. Like, I'm going to try to reach people where I can. But personally, I don't want Google's money. I'm okay without it. I'm doing just fine without it. Sure, I mean, it'd be great to have an extra couple hundred or even a few $1,000s a month like some people seem to be doing. And more power to them. But personally, I do think that we need to consider the sources of our income, the sources of money, the type of money we use, the type of currency, et cetera, not just in terms of what we've been discussing here today, but all the different ways that we are being impacted by the choices we make, and including the spiritual side of that. Like, I do think there's something to be said for taking dirty money from dirty people and how that impacts you.
Yeah, it's a talisman.
Yeah, it
Absolutely.
really is. Well, and I mean, I've said this even before I was really like pointing out like what the value for value system was or stuff like that. I mean, if we were to sit around and take a bunch of sponsors or advertisers, that'd be our paycheck. That'd be who we were working for. We wouldn't be working for ourselves. We wouldn't be, a legitimately viewer-funded, viewer-supported channel. We'd be freaking, dick pill salesman or underwear salesman or whatever. I mean, fake therapy salesman. Dude,
we're waiting to see the ad, Steve, with you in some underwear modeling, for the big bucks. That's the next one, right?
Right? That's not ever happening. That's not. But But I mean, and look, dude, let's be honest. We could probably do some hilarious ad reads, but nobody's ever going to find out because that's not how we do the show.
Yeah. I got to jump off in a couple minutes here to get ready, but I wanted to mention one other thing, if I could, just tease this article that I'm working on that should be out today or tomorrow on TLAV. It's kind of, like I said, a continuation of this discussion. I did the Bitcoin Nashville one after visiting that. The article I did last week was about the other side, Eric Schmidt, and how he's basically doing the same thing from the other direction, funding Harris, connections to Peter Thiel, connections to Bilderberg Group. I'm focusing in on now for this new article, something called the America's Frontier Fund, which I haven't really seen too much attention on. And it's interesting because this even more directly ties in these two apparently opposing sides. Again, Thiel, steering committee member of the Bilderberg Group, invested in Trump through J.D. Vance and Trump directly. Eric Schmidt and some of the more left-leaning folks getting behind Harris. Eric Schmidt, of course, another Bilderberg steering committee member. And even just in the last 2 days, I saw that the New York Times did a profile on a lesser-known Palantir individual, Alex Karp, that I think more people need to be aware of. He's the other co-founder with Peter Thiel. And he's publicly saying now that he's going all in on Harris, on Harris and Biden. And guess what? Alex Karp is also a steering committee member of the Bilderberg Group. So you got 3 steering committee members of the Bilderberg Group, one of them going all in on Trump and Bitcoin, and the other 2 going all in on Harris. But they all kind of converge, or at least Harris and Schmidt and Thiel converge in this America's Frontier Fund, which they started in May 2021. And as I'm showing in this article, it's just another sort of revolving door and just connection between big tech and military and intelligence, U.S. military and intelligence, because Eric Schmidt has been deeply involved in the White House since the Trump administration. He was appointed to the AI Commission by Donald Trump, and then that lasted into the beginning of the Biden White House. But even since that commission has ended, Schmidt has gone on to be, a regular presence at the Biden White House, and particularly through this startup company called Rebellion Defense, and through America's Frontier Fund, which is this interesting public-private deep tech fund, as they call it. Schmidt and Thiel are funding this fund and which is basically crafting U.S. government policy on AI and on military intelligence and on 5G and 6G and semiconductors, et cetera. They're just going all in on this. And so it's just another example that the Bilderberg influence is still there. It's in both parties. It's in the Biden administration and it was in the Trump administration. And they're putting their money into both sides of this, apparent most important election of our lifetime. And I think it's just more signs that the powers that wish they were are still influencing things in a way that a lot of people don't want to accept, especially those in the broader freedom movement who have fallen for the Trump deception and thinking that Trump is going to offer them something different. And he's playing that anti-establishment role very well to many of these people, including by embracing Bitcoin, because now he's got all the support of the Bitcoiners who are like, I'm going to fire Gary Gensler and we're going to put an end to this attack on the crypto community. So yeah, people can look out for that article. It'll be published on The Last American Vagabond today or tomorrow, and I'll be doing a video breakdown of that. But right now, since it's the heat of the selection season, I'm doing my best I can to kind of poke as many holes in these myths that people have about the coming selection.
Well, and I don't know if you saw or not, but Eric Schmidt, with his drone company now, White Stork, is a licensed arms dealer.
Wow, I hadn't seen that one. Had to look into that.
He's gone through the formal process to be a registered arms dealer, and this is going into the next Trump administration. As you just noted, he was a very, very present figure in that administration, where they were lining out just how far the United States was behind China in the race for AI supremacy. And yeah, we pulled up the NSCAI report a bunch of times over the years. Derrick, I know you got to jump. Thank you very much for taking some time to talk with us. Very important conversations, especially around the cryptocurrency space. I know a lot of the people here are very skeptical of it in general. And it's with all of the accusations that have been hurled at you over the years, and then me along with it, stuff like that, as far as cryptocurrency, it being on a couple of platforms and stuff like that go, it's nice to know that, we've at least got our heads on straight about the thing. So I appreciate you a bunch, my brother. Thank you very much. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks good to chat with you guys, and I hope you guys have a good day after this. If anybody wants to find my work, you can go to theconsciousresistance.com, and as I said, my articles are published over at thelastamericanvagabond.com. And I appreciate the insights from all of you guys.
Hell yeah, it's good to see you, man.
Heck yeah. Take care, Derrick. Derrick Broze, everybody. You can also check out Derrick's projects at the Greater Resistance and Exit and Build, the event that he does with John Bush. Heck yeah, always good to talk to him. My dog just kicked open my door. I'm going to go close that real quick.
Okay, well, you do that. I want to play that cocaine clip real quick where it actually works.
How did you get addicted? How did?
No, I would just do cocaine. That was really, yeah. So not just, yeah.
That's down and dirty, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it was, yeah.
But you don't anymore?
No, I don't do it anymore, man, and I'm not doing it.
Is it too much? Too much to handle?
Some of the stuff started to get a real rattle in it, too. I don't know where we were even getting it from in this country, but yeah, it started to make me feel like I was a mechanic or something.
So the thing you go back to then is alcohol for the most part.
Right, yeah, but what I want probably is cocaine, but I know that if I have a drink, then it'll be like, okay, well, I had a drink, then I can do this.
Is cocaine a stronger
oh, yeah.
up?
Yeah. Cocaine
so you're way up with cocaine more than anything else you can think of.
Cocaine will turn you into a damn owl, homie. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You'll be out on your own porch, and you'll be your own street lamp.
Yeah. That's a real conversation.
Is he going to explain water and how to drink it to Trump next? Or like air and how to breathe
Well,
it?
Trump claims he's never done any drugs. He lies. Here's a clip of him lying.
Yeah. I noticed at the events you don't drink or smoke, right?
I don't drink or smoke. No.
You never have.
No, I never have. I had a great brother who taught me a lesson. Don't drink. And he said, don't smoke. He smoked and he drank, and he was a great guy. He was handsome, very handsome guy.
Is he older? He was older?
Quite a bit older, yeah. And he had a problem with alcohol and smoke a lot. But, I tell people, no drugs, no drinking, no cigarettes.
Yeah.
I tell that to my kids all the time. I'd say, no drugs, no drinking, no smoke. And
it was tough.
He'd always tell me, he'd say never. So he was, really old enough that you would look up to somebody, and I'd look up to him anyway.
Did you admire him?
Yeah, I admired so much about him. He had so much going. He had the look. He
What was his name?
Unbelievable personality, like an incredible personality.
What was his name, Donald?
His name was Fred Trump. And he had a problem with alcohol. He got addicted to it because they say alcohol is tougher than drugs to get off of. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
I'm in recovery, actually. I've been in recovery, so like most of the last 10 years.
From alcohol?
From drugs and alcohol.
So which is worse?
For me, drugs is the problem, but if I have a drink, then it's tougher for me to prevent myself from getting.
It sets off a chain.
Yeah.
But which is harder to quit? I've heard alcohol is harder to quit than drugs, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can only imagine because it's probably more readily available.
And it's social, and you're sitting and everyone's drinking and all.
Yeah, rarely do you go to a dinner and everybody's eating Xanaxes or something, for appetizers.
Right.
Usually people are having like a mint julep or something a little fancier, Negroni I just learned about.
Right.
But yeah.
So you have a problem with that then?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's been in my family. My family, it's like, yeah.
Can you stay away from it?
Yeah, I've done a good job. I mean,
so how long have you been off?
I go to recovery meetings. I've been off most recently a little over 2 years.
Do you ever go back on?
Yeah, I've had stints where I go back on
and you don't control it.
It's tough. It goes downhill pretty quick.
No kidding. So you
think it's going to be easy.
You think you're controlling it.
And then you're you're doing go-kart and racing with hookers and stuff. It gets bad.
It's just not to do it, right?
Right. So then in the end, you're like, I have to not do it. Did you see, like, with your brother, could you see it or anything? Like,
yeah.
Man.
I was amazed because he had so much going, he had everything going. I think it happened in college at a fraternity maybe, or I don't know, somewhere along the line it happened. And all of a sudden, this is not unique. This is a very common story, unfortunately. But and then the family would see it and start to notice it, and it didn't get better. It didn't get better. I was amazed. He lived for so long in bad conditions. In terms of, I was amazed that his body could hold out. It held out, and it had bad moments. But his body was unbelievably strong that it could withstand this.
Yeah, it's a body. Your body's just so resilient.
Yeah.
Do you remember the last time that you saw him or spent with him?
I do, and
I'm sorry to ask you about it. Is it all right?
No. It's the reason it's good talking about it is it might help other people. If it helps one other person, it's worth the conversation.
Hookers and go-karts.
Turn you into a damn owl, boy, homie.
It's just Theo's got like ADHD, obviously. Cocaine ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
Tweaker ADHD.
I think Theo thinks about the blow a lot. Yeah.
It's just a very interesting exchange.
Oh, and if you guys are watching this on on Derrick's channels,
shit,
he
did
left.
We just get him canceled?
No, he left the Facebook and the YouTube up. If you guys are watching on Derrick's channels, the Max Egan was on it at the beginning of the show. This is the end of the show. We're wrapping in about 15 minutes. So if you want to go back and watch that, we're on Rockfin, Rumble, BitChute, and Odyssey. AM Wake Up. I haven't added the BitChute and Odyssey links in the description yet. I should do that.
At what point do we start plugging Content Safe?
As soon as I talk to Matt and get that set up. I haven't had a moment this week yet, but yeah, I guess we're gonna get the archive up on Matt Raymer's Content Safe, which is awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, if you want to I don't know. You know a little bit more, a lot more about content safe than I do. We've had Matt on to talk about it before, but it's been a while.
No, it isn't content safe that I know so much. It's that I've been talking to Matt behind the scenes for a few years now, and he's much more informed and grounded than a lot of the people in the alternative media. So he fits in very well with our community and is a genuine individual who's trying to actually help people. So we've, in essence, in the value for value system and exchange, I reached out to him and I'd be like, hey, if we make a point of mentioning you and your services to the people that we interview, and I offer editing services in exchange, would you be able to alleviate the degree to which Steve is stuck uploading things one by one over the course of the next few years? And he's like, yeah, I'll take that exchange. So for any content creators or any people who want to actually have a really valuable service that the likes of James Corbett and other wonderful people use to provide their things to the internet, then check out Content Safe, because he's a good guy who's willing to work with the people who do the hard work. So just throwing that out there.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. I know it's torture tease, but there is some funny shit that's happened over the last.
No. Here, I'll give you. So to clarify my point, because I don't want to get lost, and I do think it's important that we laugh. I first learned about laughing at pain from a friend of mine who fell down a flight of stairs. And what he did was he made a bunch of really funny noises as he was falling and when he hit the bottom, so that he wouldn't be screaming out in pain and so that he wouldn't seem like a pussy and everything. And I thought to myself, wow, that's a really fucking good idea. Just laugh about it. And then that makes it okay. What I was talking about is, are we at the point as people, be it individuals or society, where we realize we can't just laugh about it, we actually broke something? And in that point, what happens? Do we stay there laughing, or do we realize that at a certain point, we can laugh as we go about doing the things that treat the problem that we were trying to laugh about? And so it's more of just like not trying to step on the laughter, but more saying at the same time, are we getting up from being that hurt? And it's just one of those things. It's because it can be a cope in a very positive way, or it can be a cope in a way where we aren't willing to really look at the pain. It's both.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why there's the emphasis on the action and the emphasis on actually doing things in your community and fucking all of the other different methods of technocratic state extraction that we discuss on a frequent, regular basis. And then back in cartoon land.
Yeah! Ladies and gentlemen, we are here tonight to officially nominate Kamala Harris for president.
How pissed off do you think Michelle Obama was that Lil Jon came out in her outfit?
Fire, get loud, another round of shots. DNC, turn out for what? Turn out for what?
That's for the Georgia side, right?
Yeah.
That's
so
for Georgia, which
let's
changed their
to-
voting shit to where now they have to match ballots to IDs.
The civil rights movement, where we fight for our freedom. Extremists in Georgia are trying to silence our voices by kicking Georgians off of the rolls and making it harder to vote. But y'all, when we send Kamala Harris to the
Bullshit,
White
you lying
House, she'll
bitch.
fight for our freedom to vote, our reproductive freedoms, and our freedom to thrive.
Sweat
In
drop
the
off
spirit
my
of good
balls.
trouble, Georgia cast 123 votes.
That's
for
this
the
song
next
right here. The
Huh?
sweat
Freedom.
drop off my balls.
No,
Your
no,
reproductive freedoms are
that's a different
available
song.
in the
Wait a
party.
minute. He only has one song, dude.
No,
It's
that's
sweat
turned
off
down.
my balls.
That's turned down for what? That's
What?
turned down for what? I promise you it is. I promise.
He says something about balls in there somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure he does. It's Lil Jon. And then the Jersey delegation.
Jersey, how do you cast your vote?
Everybody, I'm Governor Phil Murphy. We're from Jersey, baby. And you're not. In the Great Garden State, we care about protecting women's rights and lifting up vulnerable communities. That's what we mean when we say the Great Garden State.
My name is Dr. Joey Perella, pronouns she, her, hers. I'm a proud resident of the Garden State. I'm proud to stand with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz because they stand with the LGBTQ community.
And then California did this.
See, that's funny.
cast your vote. Mr. Secretary, the great state of California passes at this time. California passes.
Oh, it didn't go into the da-da-da-da-da. That was just funny that they played that music because someone would, everybody was live streaming this shit and someone was talking over this and they're like, where's that music coming from? And it's like they're playing music from those places. But that was just so they could get, the funky bunch together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And plus, it probably takes a while for Nancy to hobble around and Maxine to hobble around. These are fucking old ass people, right? Could you imagine being Gavin Newsom and be like, hurry the fuck up, okay? Right now they think like, and plus, I mean, he's got to be pissed, right? You got the clip of Michelle Obama saying, we don't steal things, we don't cheat, after we showed, they literally created some sort of committee, the day before, so that way they could do what they're doing now when it comes to Joe Biden. Like, it's so crazy, dude, like how they can just stand there and lie. They just can lie and lie and lie. Doesn't matter which side. They can lie and 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 lie, lie, and just nothing.
If things don't go our way, we don't have the luxury of whining or cheating others to get further ahead. No,
years, you fucking goon.
16 or 12 out of the 16 years.
Win. If we see a mountain in front of us, we don't expect there to be an escalator waiting to take us to the top.
Absolute fucking fuck these people. That's true. Okay? Out of the last fucking 16 years, these motherfuckers have ran it for 12 of those 16 years, right? As far as those same motherfucking people, when they said they announced that Clinton, Obama is going to fucking speak at this, it's like, Jesus fuck. We're never going to get away from this shit.
Because Biden has been right in there the whole time. He was,
yes.
Biden's been running.
That's what connects it to
the 80s.
That's what connects it to. I mean, it's been this group for 12 out of the 16 years. Just the last almost 2 decades. And they're trying to push it into 2 decades worth that they've had control of this.
They do brand in about 20-year margins for 50-year turnovers. So it's just like they have to create those continuums of branding fused with semi-understanding so people are corralled back into the dominion of archons. And then these are just the superficial laughing faces that are slapped on like stickers so you never see beneath the surface of things.
They're literally talking, I mean, for one of their main things is the joy thing, right? I mean, and you watch Biden's speech and I'm fucking yelling and shit. I mean, they're literally like, I mean, it's the same Nazi shit, It
really is.
It really fucking is, man. Like, here's Doug Jamieoff. He did a speech last night.
She's always been there for our children, and I know she'll always be there for yours, too. Kamala is a joyful warrior. It's doing for her country what she has always done for the people that she loves. Her passion will benefit all of us when she's our president. And here's the thing about joyful warriors.
Fucking sales training seminar I've ever been to.
And Kamala is as tough as it comes. Just ask the criminals, the global gangsters, and the witnesses before the Senate Judiciary Committee.
It's how many times she says joy.
She never runs from a fight. And she knows the best way to deal with a coward is to take him head on. Because we all know cowards are weak, and Kamala Harris can smell weakness. She doesn't tolerate any BS. You've all seen that look, and you know that look I'm talking about. That look is not just a meme. It reflects her true belief in honest and direct leadership.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up, Doug. Yeah, Jessica,
My button wouldn't work when
I tell my
you said
girl all the
joy.
time that they're fucking Mario Kart clouds. They look like fuck clouds that we have.
Oh,
here.
real cartoon clouds in the air.
Yeah.
There's probably
Like
like
they
a little
do.
tugboat plane out there just farting out little cartoon clouds.
They look so freaking fake. It's ridiculous.
It's fun when you see real clouds. You know, like puffy, just a regular puffy cloud without like a haze or lines. It's just it's just clouds. It's like, wow, these might be fake completely.
This was up by where my girl is yesterday.
Where's Bob Ross when you need him to paint this and describe exactly how you get the...
Here's the little harp frequency clouds.
The little wispy cloud.
This is the little airplanes in there. There's always two airplanes because every airplane needs a friend. Everyone needs a friend, even a stratospheric aerosol injection airplane. They take a couple of those and they put them up into the sky, friends. And well, those stratospheric aerosol injection airplane, they puff out a little bit here and a little bit there, and then they turn the frequency station on, and it just ripples across God's great vast expanse under the firmament.
And that's
Happy
how
painting.
That's how we get these clouds. We just get a little bit of the ivory white, and we just pop.
Right there behind that cerulean blue.
Just a pop, but in a straight line.
You get your number 2 fan brush and some of that Van Dyke brown for a little bit of the sulfur that's coming out of that airplane there.
Yeah, so
a little bit of yellow ochre.
Thursdays is Texas Slim. See you back tomorrow.
I believe so. Unless otherwise, med highlighted or mentioned. Yeah, believe so. And huge thanks to Max Egan and Derrick Broze for being on the show today. Oh, God damn it. I keep forgetting, which is ironic given the name of the game, but I would have loved to have played Memory Recall playlist with Max, the Dementia Memory Recall playlist. Yeah. Next time.
On that.
Next time. It's been a long while on that. Pretty much abandoned that game entirely. Gonna bring it back.
Yeah, there's a couple of clips already dropped from this episode that if you share the Derrick Broze one, tag Rumble.
Right?
Yep.
Tag old Chris.
Not me. The Rumble guy.
Pavlovsky.
Yeah. Pavlovsky. He's a Russian. You know, a Prussian is the one who conceived the World's Fair there in Chicago, a Prussian.
Okay.
They had pumps that were pumping 40 million gallons of water a day. Just a little tidbit.
That's
a lot of water, dude.
It is a lot of water.
It's a lot of water. Anyways, Thursdays.
Yeah, Slim. And maybe Brianna Sogdal from North Dakota there. Can't remember if we're doing that tomorrow or not. Brianna's been doing a ton of great articles for the Beef Initiative on their various websites. Beefnews.org for all of that. Tease, remind people why they ought be sharing conspiracy synergy with their friends and neighbors and all that kind of good stuff.
Sure thing. So we've been polarized by emotional divides in order to make it so that just trying to have a conversation with another human being feels like going to war. One thing is very clear that's going to get worse. And so my show is kind of like designed to get people who are just starting to wake up to be able to skip through all the bullshit that would otherwise be thrown in front of them. And we've all been through it. Like if you first start waking up to 9/11, you think Bush did it. And then you realize, oh, it goes a lot deeper than that. And it takes a really long time to figure out what's actually going on. So this is a quick encapsulative way of getting everyone up to speed so that they can jump in on the hard-hitting shows like this one without being brutally offended by it. You won't be able to show this show to like the 30% who are deeply grafted to the machine. They'll hate it. They'll think I'm the devil, and they won't get any of the jokes or anything that I'm saying. The mid bracket will appreciate it, and those of us in the know will laugh our ass off. So it's one of those things where it's a tool that grows more accessible as people start to see the great reveal of the apocalypse and the unveiling of how horrible these systems that we have existed in for our entire lives have been. So depending on where they're at in their respective trajectory, that's a tool that you can use to help everybody. And if you haven't watched it yet, check out the Plan to Save the World, because that isn't just me talking. That's me having reached out to 20 different content creators, including Chris and Steve, to get their thoughts on what we can all do in a practical way. And so those are serious talks that everyone gives on these subjects of how can we save the world? How can we come together? And that, Steve, scroll down a little bit. This is the 4 little kind of points of the 2-minute promo of it, the 5 minutes at the end of the episode, the synopsis of it, which is the 26 minutes. That's the last episode of Conspiracy Synergy I did. And then there's the full 2-hour testimonials, which I guarantee most of you haven't watched yet. That's your great people talking about great solutions in a real way that you can go out and do. So this is something where saving the world involves you. If you want to do that, check out conspiracysynergy.com. And thanks again for all the support for everyone. If you haven't supported the show yet, please do. We desperately need it because this is less than a minimum wage job unless you step up and help us out a little bit. So thank you again, everyone, for being here, for sharing it, for caring enough to continue to do it in a long-form war of attrition, in a 10,000-year-old spiritual war that continues to teabag or nut kick everyone. Thanks for showing up, everyone.
Heck yeah. All right, you guys. Couple people to thank who threw some late love to the show. I think it was over here. Load up. Elias, thank you very much.
I'm gonna go look now.
Does it
All
mean we have
right.
to look at it right now? How does that work?
Yeah, we're totally gonna go look at it right now.
Okay.
And then Model Madness, good to see you. Hi all, can't help but sense that Bitcoin is a beta CBDC test bed, even though people have and can make money. I think there's going to be a rug pull. Yeah.
Oh shit! I don't want to show that.
Okay.
It's just it's Gaza. They just blew up a school.
Oh fuck yeah. And veneer
God
of
damn
civility. Thank
now
you.
I gotta live with that. In
Right.
my brain.
Veneer of civility says, great show, guys. Keep it up. Greg Walker says, so this regarding the 2-party delusion, what do you think of if the left wins, they will push for carbon credit? If it's the right, CBDCs and the sake fame paradigm with digital ID versus border wall, that'll be a component of it, I think. Sure. Yeah. That seems accurate. Thank you, Greg. Thanks to everybody who helped produce today's show. Direct donate links are in the description. Yeah, you guys rock. Don't go to Tripoli's Twitter.
Well, I'm just
or do it for a fun reminder of the
it's not
contrast between we are and what is coming in the future.
That is one that is tough to joke about. That video is fucked up. I only seen exactly 0.005 milliseconds of it.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks to everybody who's watching us on BitChute and Odyssey. We're new over there. If you have BitChute or Odyssey accounts, please go follow the channel over there. If you want some really cool stuff to put on your body, go to amwakeupshow.com. Hit that merch store link. We got cool shit. Yeah, Poppy's Field Project tonight, Slim tomorrow. And then, as always, Friday's Independent Review, Third Rail with Nature Boy. Looking forward to what the boys have in store for America Unplugged, Saturday Night Anarchy, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you guys soon. Good luck to us all.
Peace.
Go back to bed, America. Your government has figured out how it all transpired. Go back to bed, America. Your government is in control again. Here's American gladiators. Watch this. Shut up. Go back to bed, America. Here's American